Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And you would naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure, you see. And after several nights, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now.
This botanical garden has been around since the 1600s, so it's not only old, but it has a tremendous amount of history here. Hortus has been around for a while now, hasn't it?
Yes, there is. It was originally funded in 1636 as part of a healthcare program for the city of Amsterdam. Amsterdam was booming at that time, golden age, many immigrants from around Europe. And the city was expanding, but there was also a plague just a couple of years before that. So the city had to come up with a plan, and the plan consists of 3 parts. First of all, they wrote a book of law for medicine, the Pharmacopoeia of Amsterdam, written by a doctor called Tulp, Dr. Tulip.
So amazing.
But that was a law book and a recipe book. So next to this book of recipe, there was a school for doctors was founded in that period, so the 30s, 1630s. And as a third part of this program, the Botanic Garden was founded. And in the Botanic Garden, you could find all the contents of your recipes. So you had it, a law book of recipes, a school for doctors, and a reference collection of plants, which were the main components of the medicinal recipes.
So it's primarily medicinal then and edibles, as opposed to anything else?
Well, as a matter of fact, it was called the Hortus Medicus, the medic garden. But that started to change quite fast already. So 10 years after its foundation, there was a curator who was collecting a lot of ornamental plants. He was a real plant collector, and in 1648 he made a list of all the plants that he had in the garden. Nobody asked him to do that, but he made this list. It contained for about 40% of medicinal plants from the book by Dr. Tulip, and the other half, more than half, was plants that were just, well, I don't know why he collected them. We don't know actually, because we have the list, but we don't have the stories from that. But then a next episode in the history is in 1682. And in 1682, the VOC, the East Indies Company, wanted to have a garden in Amsterdam where they could show off the wealth and expanse of their trade network. So just a medicinal garden with some ornamental plants was not good enough anymore. And they came up with this location here, where they would found this new garden with space for exotic plants. And that's how the Hortus started its history in this location as a botanic garden.
And bringing this back up to present day, what are some of the things that you're really known here at Hortus?
Well, we're known here as a place for the people of Amsterdam to come and enjoy the greenery. That is one thing, but we're also known for a 3 climate house where we see different climates and how plants adapt to that climate. We have a desert house where we explain how plants adapt to drought and how which plants did so in the old world, so Africa and surroundings, and in the new world. And see how they evolved actually the same adaptations to drought, but from a different genetic background, so to say. So it's talking about co-evolution in the desert house, but also about adaptation to drought. Then we have the tropic house, where you see the the leafiness of a tropical rainforest, but you can also see epiphytes and broadleaf plants, adaptations to high temperatures and high humidity. And the subtropic house. And in the subtropic house, one of the emphases in the subtropic house is the South African collection, the Cape collection, and that's something that we're trying to develop more and more.
So a lot of caudiciforms and,
yeah, but
like
also fine-bole species, caudiciforms, different things. Mm-hmm. Caudiciforms are often also drought-resistant plants, and you find some of them in the desert house as well. But we're also trying to focus on our historic connection with the Cape. So just give continuity to what we are from the beginning. So stay close to our identity. Yeah. But innovate and do new things and focus on this also botanically.
Right, and
really
especially because the Hortus
world
is so old. You have so hundreds of years of existence. It's not like something that happened in the 1800s. We're talking about the 1600s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So to be able to pull upon that history because you have it is so special.
Yeah.
What is the role of botanic gardens in the conservation of species, at least from UC? Maybe it's not just the role that Hortus plays, but maybe the role of botanic gardens in general.
Yeah.
And do you feel like that's a huge burden? I mean, we're talking about 400,000 plant species out there, and you can't save them all. So, what is the role of these botanic gardens, and how do you have that decision-making process?
It's a challenging thing because people expect that botanic gardens save all the plants of the world. Botanic gardens are telling each other that they should do that or doing that, but eventually when you have a garden of 1.2 hectares, center of Amsterdam, where ground prices are high, and you're trying to show diversity of plants. We have 4,000 plants in this garden. Our approach really is to have one individual for each species. If you want to effectively conserve a plant species, you need to have 1 hectare for only one species and have several individuals, because eventually you should make sure the population stays alive. So we're actually not really equipped to make a good contribution to conservation in that sense. So we have to think, what can we do to make a contribution? So we are trying to think of that, where is the win-win situation, and can we make a sensible contribution? I think one of the contributions that botanic gardens can make is to show the wealth of plant kingdom, diversity of plants, and make sure that people appreciate plants and are motivated to do their bit in conserving the world of plants. That's probably the way that any botanic garden can contribute effectively.
Wow guys, this is beautiful here. Hortus Botanicus in Amsterdam, guys. Give it a thumbs up. Wow.
So, can you tell me a little bit about this glass house?
Yes, it was built in 1912, and it was actually built because the original glass house that was here had to be replaced by a large laboratory for Hugo de Vries. So before his laboratory was built, a new glass house was made and the plant transferred from there to here.
It seems like you have a lot of your trees or your kind of some of your tall plants here.
Yeah, we have some, especially some cycads on display here. One of the most special ones is the one that is here. It's an Eastern Cape giant cycad, the Encephalornis altensteinii, which is in itself not the rarest cycad, but this plant is probably 300 or 350 years old. It was bought by our director in 1850, so it's now in the garden for 168 years. And it was bought from the collection of King William II. So he had a large collection of plants and art, which he had to, or after he died in 1849, and because he had debts, these collections had to be sold off. And that's when we got this plant. So this one is, we have a relationship with this plant for 168 years now.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And you can see that it's gone through a number of phases here. So if you look at the stem, here it's original width, I would say. Here it starts to go a bit thinner. And then it makes a turn. And then now it's growing up again towards the light.
Yeah, and it also seems to have has a
it needs some support, like other old men. It's a male plant actually. You can see some of the cones there from last year maybe. But you can also see how the history of this individual is reflected in the stem, in the trunk. So I think if I would interpret this, I would say at this age and size, it was taken from the Cape, from South Africa, and brought to Europe. Then it went into the royal plant collections, maybe a palace, standing next to the window, bending towards the light. And then when it got to the Hortus, it was growing up again towards the light. As it was standing in a greenhouse.
You've had a relationship with this for 160 years, but that means that it's way older than the 160 years old.
Yeah, so we're estimating, it's estimated to be like 300 years old, more or less.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you have some other cycads as well.
Yeah, so there are several other cycads. This is a male one, as I said, but that's also the same species, a female individual.
Have you ever tried to breed them, or is that possible?
We have tried that some time ago, but we're not actively pursuing propagation of the cycads. We're not really running a conservation breeding program.
And it looks like you have a cinnamon tree there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's actually flowering at the moment.
Yeah, I've been actually pretty surprised because I see them more in houseplant markets now, and I'm wondering if it would make actually a good houseplant.
Well, actually, this one is allegedly been planted by Hugo de Vries in 1912. So, and this greenhouse is not the most humid. So it would probably look like, except for the light levels, it would probably look like the house conditions.
Mm-hmm. And then what do you have growing in these like little glass houses here? These little dresser glass houses. Are these?
These are cycads. Actually, it's an art project from some time ago already, and it's also explaining the natural and cultural history of cycads. So it's going in depth. This plant, this species, sort of important for me personally. It has a very strong smell, and in the city where I studied, there was a botanic garden just next to the biology faculty. And it had one of these plants growing in the greenhouses. And the smell was so strong and so enchanting that I would actually go into the botanic garden and take that little tour around this plant simply to experience the smell.
I mean, it smells like a jasmine or something like really deep, deep like that.
It's jasmine-like fragrance.
It's also striking that it has both purple and white flowers on.
Yeah, it's that's a matter of flower age. So I think it's, if I'm correct, it starts off as a purple flower, and then as it wilts, it turns white.
And now what's in this little room over here?
Just more container plants.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's the dragon tree, the Canary Island dragon tree.
Oh, this is a type of oak.
A type of oak.
Is it more native here? Or?
No, it's a subtropical species. I would guess it's from China or so. This is one of my favorites. The Hoy else, the Cunonia capensis. It has these opposite crosswise, the crosswise leaves. But then as the new leaves emerge, it has this red spoon convolving the buds.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Where is this endemic to? Or
It's South Africa, so Eastern Cape, I think.
and I almost missed him in the back. That's a giant container. He hasn't flowered yet, I'm assuming.
No, we
Yeah.
didn't have it.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much for like the tour and everything that you've done and allowing us to see the Pelargonium collection as well. I think this is phenomenal, and I'm sure so many of the viewers will just be really appreciative of your time and everything that you've created here.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And you would naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure, you see. And after several nights, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now.